Japan is widely recognized as a very safe country with a low crime rate. So serious crimes such as bank robberies or hostage situations are few and far between. The story I will present to you today is one of those rare cases. A bank robbery gone wrong, which resulted in 40 customers and staff being held hostage, with 4 people ultimately being killed. The hostages were forced to take off their clothes and stand in a semicircle to form a human meat shield around the culprit, to protect him from police snipers. This incident is the single most prominent case of bank robbery in Japan, and is also one of the few cases where the culprit and the police got into an actual gunfight. This is the story of the Mitsubishi Bank Hostage Incident. The event takes place on January 26, 1979. In Japan, most companies pay their salaries on the 25th, so on the 26th, the banks are usually crowded with people visiting to withdraw money. And banks will prepare for this by having a large amount of cash on hand, making it an ideal day of the month for any potential bank robbers. The Kitabatake branch office of the Mitsubishi Bank, located in the city of Osaka, was no exception. The bank was crowded with customers wanting to withdraw their salaries. At 2:30 p.m., the culprit, Akiyoshi Umekawa, comes in through the front entrance with a double-barreled shotgun in hand. He immediately fires 2 shots into the ceiling, throws a bag across the counter, and demands 50 million yen in cash. Umekawa immediately notices a banker trying to make a phone call and shoots him through the head, killing him instantly. In the initial chaos, a few people managed to escape. One of them ran into a police officer who just so happened to be patrolling the area, and informs him of the situation. The officer runs into the bank with his pistol drawn, demanding Umekawa to drop his firearm. When Umekawa does not comply, the officer fires a warning shot. Japanese police at the time were trained to always fire a warning shot first, but this would end up costing the officer his life. Umekawa returns fire, aimed directly at the police officer, mortally wounding him. A few other people who managed to escape notified the police, and a staff member had pressed the panic button as well, and within minutes, more officers would arrive on scene. Yet another officer ran up to the front entrance and was gunned down by Umekawa. The police decide to send in the Zero Squad, the equivalent of the SWAT team, equipped with armored vehicles, rifles, and riot shields. Seeing this show of force from the police, Umekawa orders the bank employees to close the shutters to prevent the police from getting in or being able to see the interior of the building. As the shutters were closing, the police managed to throw bicycles or riot shields under one of them, leaving a small opening. This small opening will come into play later on. Once the shutters were closed, Umekawa asks the branch manager to step forward and shoots him point blank, blaming him that the reason they are in this situation is because the manager did not prepare the money fast enough. The branch manager would eventually die from this injury, making him the 4th casualty of this incident. Umekawa then orders male employees to take off their clothes except their underwear, and the female employees to take off everything. He then has the female employees to form an inner circle around him, and male employees to form an outer circle, with all of them facing outward. This was to deter police from trying to break in, as the hostages would be caught in the crossfire should a gunfight break out. It is assumed the reason Umekawa had female bankers take their clothes off is so the men would be hesitant to turn around, making it more difficult for them to try and restrain him. One of the more senior bankers remained calm during this entire ordeal, unintimidated by Umekawa, and encouraging other hostages that everything will be okay. Umekawa took a disliking to this, feeling that his authority was being challenged. He fired his shotgun at this man, who was hit and fell to the floor, pretending to be dead. Umekawa, unsure if his shot had been fatal, orders the young banker to take his knife and stab him several times to confirm the kill. The young banker approaches the senior banker who was shot and sees he is still alive, but lies that the man is already dead, to which Umekawa replies, "Carve his ear off and bring it to me." The young banker goes back up to the man who whispers, "Just do it." The man playing dead managed to stay still and silent while his ear was being cut off. He would continue to play dead on the floor for the next 20 hours. After receiving the severed ear, Umekawa put it in his mouth and spat it out, claiming that it did not taste good. A few hours had passed since this incident began, and by this time the police had over 100 vehicles and 600 officers surrounding the bank. They had also secured the second and third floor of the building by entering through the emergency escape stairs on the side of the building. They stationed several officers there who were going to lead the negotiation as well as assist in the case of a coordinated rescue attempt. Umekawa was aware of the situation on the upper floors, so he had a banker give a note to the police, claiming that if the police came anywhere near the stairs leading downstairs, he would begin killing hostages. He also had hostages create a barricade to block these stairs. What Umekawa did not know is that the police had also drilled tiny holes into the shutters covering the entrances to the bank. The police would use these holes to get information on what was happening inside. Sniping Umekawa through one of these holes was considered, but it was deemed too risky, as if they miss, he would most likely begin killing the hostages. And they couldn't get a clear shot anyway due to the human meat shield he had set in place around him. As the sun set and it began getting dark, Umekawa demanded food for him and the hostages. Specifically, he wanted 400 grams of steak and some wine for himself. The police considered lacing his food with some kind of sedatives to put Umekawa to sleep, but decided against it as it would alter the taste, and he might have a hostage test the steak before he ate it himself. As the night went on, the police decided it was too risky to attempt the rescue by force at this point. They would wait until Umekawa eventually fell asleep, which they estimated would happen around the 40 to 50 hours mark. The next morning, Umekawa ordered the bank to gather 10 million yen, 5 million to pay off his various debts, and 5 million for his mother. A little past noon, he sends out a hostage carrying the money, giving him a list of people he is in debt with. At around 3 p.m., Umekawa's mother came to the scene, in an attempt to persuade Umekawa to turn himself in. Although he picked up the telephone call from his mother, he did not reply to anything she said. So instead, his mother wrote a letter to Umekawa, imploring him to release the hostages. He originally had one of the hostages try to read the letter to him, because he didn't want to be distracted. But because the hostage had difficulty trying to read her handwriting, Umekawa had to read it himself. After reading the letter, Umekawa elaborates to the hostages that his mother had never received formal education, and that is why her handwriting is so hard to read. His mother is the only family he has, and they had a very hard life living in extreme poverty. He also claims he originally had planned the bank robbery to be over in just a few minutes, and never intended it to escalate into a hostage situation. It is unclear how much of an impact his mother's letter had, but from this point on he allowed the hostages to put their clothes back on, and would begin to release some of them. The man who had been playing dead on the floor had pretty much reached his breaking point, so he stood up and asked to be released, which Umekawa surprisingly permitted. Umekawa also allowed the hostages to use the bathroom, as they had just been doing it in a corner of the room up until now. The police had a few men standing outside the bathroom window, and they would encourage and exchange information with the hostages, gauging their moment to make a move. For dinner that night, Umekawa ordered roast beef and wine, telling the hostages that this would be his last supper, and it will all be over soon. As the sun rose on the third day, Umekawa was beginning to doze off. One of the employees went to the bathroom window, told the police that it was their chance to strike, and that he would give a hand signal when Umekawa had his guard down. Obtaining this information, the police had several members be ready to jump in from under the shutters. While Umekawa was reading the morning newspaper, he told one of the female employees to bring him some tea. This caused a gap in the line of human meat shields he had the hostages create. The employee gave out the signal, and the police burst into the building, firing a total of 8 shots. 3 of these hit Umekawa in the head and neck, and he fell to the floor, sputtering that he would kill them all. The hostages were led out of the building, and Umekawa was rushed to a hospital, but he died of the gunshots he received. The Mitsubishi Bank Hostage Incident lasted a total of 42 hours. During those 42 hours, over 40% of people who owned the television were constantly tuned in to watch the live report broadcasted by virtually every network. It still remains a well-known incident to this day, more than 40 years since it took place. There have been movies made about it, and it is always included in documentaries that cover major crimes in the mid to late 20th century. Thank you for watching until the end. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I'll see you next time.